Nation. It's Monday, September 8, 2025, and I'm your host, Allison Donahue. Brought to you by the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, this live program connects you directly with our city officials, giving you the chance to hear the latest local news and ask questions about the issues that matter most to you. Joining us today will be Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan Biller, who sits on the Accessory Dwelling Unit Special Task Force, to answer some questions from you about housing in Grand Rapids, among other things, whatever questions come up from the public. But first, let's go over some of the latest updates from around Grand Rapids. To start us off, some of the big headlines on the Rapidian from the last month. If you hear something interesting and you want to learn more, head on over to therapidian.org and catch up on our latest coverage. The first annual Small Foreign Festival, a DIY arts and music festival at Sullivan Field, took place last month. Over 1,000 people showed up for the all-day music event, heralded as a successful event made for and by local artists. 100 small local businesses received $5,000 in grant funding through the Comcast RISE program, which is designed to support business owners and entrepreneurs through technology upgrades and business consultation. Local business owners and community members attended and hosted a town hall last month in response to Uptown GR's promotion of Foxtail Coffee Company, calling for more emphasis on supporting locally owned businesses in marketing and development efforts. That was our most read article on the Rapidian this last month, meaning Grand Rapids cares about local businesses and coffee. The city broke ground last month on the $19 million East Riverfront Area project, a new park located just west of the Accessory Amphitheater, the first major investment in public green space along the south side of the Grand River in many years. A local design contest for Grand Rapids' 175th anniversary poster sparked controversy when community members raised concerns about AI use in one of the submissions. Although the creator denied using AI, they ultimately withdrew their entry from the three finalists. Public voting closed on Friday, September 5, and the winner, selected from the top two, will be announced at the Art Prize opening ceremony on September 19, with both finalists displayed at City Hall during the event. Read more about these updates on the Rapidian.org. It's our community-powered news made for and by Grand Rapidians. In other local news, looking ahead at the month of September, Art Prize is coming back to Grand Rapids this month, kicking off on September 18th and running through October 4. For a full list of entries, venues, and events, visit artprize.org. Tech Week GR is also on the horizon, running September 15 through 20, with events citywide celebrating innovation, startups, and the growing tech scene here in West Michigan. And Fiesta Mexicana is taking place September 12th through the 14th at Calder Plaza, celebrating Mexican heritage and culture here in Grand Rapids. That's it for city updates this month. When we come back from the break, we'll be joined by Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan Biller, who sits on the Accessory Dwelling Unit, or ADU, Special Task Force.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm your host, Allison Donahue. Today I'm joined by Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan.
In that, we've got the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce in there and a collection of other people, planning department, et cetera. So it's kind of the nerds of the ADUs are helping to figure it out and make it easier for everybody else.
And that's who makes up the special task force for ADUs.
Yes, I may have missed probably someone very important, but there's, so Flywheel is in there, Ryan Kilpatrick sits on there. I'm trying to think, the Urban League is in there, so
it's not a pop quiz. Yeah, it's a lot of people who are invested in housing here in Grand Rapids and coming up with new solutions. What is the goal of a task force? I imagine that they're not supposed to last a super long time, maybe not the whole 4 years that you're mayor, but what is ultimately the goal of this task force?
So I'll speak to that. The reason I put it together is because, and I said this in my State of the City, we have a problem not of permission, but of implementation with ADUs. So if I can, I'm going to take about 5 minutes here,
Please.
if that's okay. So first of all, when people talk about 21st century modes of transportation and they mean e-bikes and scooters, they often miss 5 million year old modes of transportation like your feet. So I'm a pedestrian, that's not new technology. Just because people are interested in making our city more pedestrian friendly doesn't mean it's a new idea. ADUs are also not a new idea. I happen to live in Heritage Hill. Heritage Hill is filled with carriage houses that have rental units in them. That's an example of an ADUs that have been around for decades. There are basement apartments all over town. Those are sort of ADUs by another name that have been around for a long time. What's new now is we are, as everyone probably in Grand Rapids knows, we have real need for more housing in town as soon as possible. And we also need to be getting things that are as affordable as possible. And so those two things, the need for affordability and the need for more units, really aligns with the potential of accessory dwelling units. Now, for those of you out in TV land, accessory dwelling unit, I always oversimplify this as think of converting a garage into a studio apartment. Now there are other key things you can do. Converting your basement into an apartment turns out to be probably the cheapest way to get into the accessory dwelling unit space. But garages exist all over town. They're there, they've already got 4 walls, they got a floor, they got a ceiling. So some of the obvious pieces of constructing a standalone apartment exist. They also have the advantage that, you know, somebody in your basement, maybe they play AC/DC at 200 decibels on a Friday night and you want to go to sleep and you're like wishing you didn't have a renter in your basement. The advantage of having a renter in your backyard is they're physically not connected to your building. Now, that brings us to another point, which is why should people want to do this? It's not just the need for housing, it's the need for more housing options in our lives. So I'll use me as an example. My in-laws live in upstate New York, and it may be time for them to transition to their next stage of housing. Melissa and I would love to have them live with us, but there's no space in our house. So we are actively trying to work on converting our garage into space that my in-laws can stay in. Now, that's not a rental unit, but it's a real need and something we're really excited about. Another example that Nate brought up a while ago was boomerang kids. I've got one of those at home too. So my daughter went off to grad school, did a lot of performing in Europe. Now she's back here and she's going to retool and get some credentials in the US. So she's applying to do some more studies. She's living at home. Why? Because it's free. It doesn't cost me anything more. But what if I didn't like my daughter as much as I do? Maybe I'd rather have her in the garage. So there are, you can see the opportunities for multi-generational living are really good. The opportunities to actually age in place as an investor are interesting, because just because today I want to live in the big house and rent out or let someone else use the smaller unit, doesn't mean I wouldn't want to flip that in the future, rent out the front unit and live in the smaller unit behind. If it's really just me and Melissa, how much house do we need? We probably don't need 5,000 square feet. So, probably 700 square feet would be a lot more attractive. So there's a need, there's an opportunity to make the community richer, better off, and by richer I mean like just with more good things in it, right? And there's also an opportunity to drive down our overall housing costs, because now Nathan will, he's more pessimistic on cost than I am, and we'll see how much it costs me to do the space in my backyard. But if you could let's say you could do a conversion of some sort for $75,000, and let's say you want to make 8% return on your money. Well, 7 times 8 is 56, so you want to make $5,600 a year. Well, divide that by 12, that's less than $500 a month, and you're happy as an investor. So good luck trying to find a one-bedroom apartment for less than $500 in Grand Rapids right now, right?
Yeah.
So the opportunity to introduce a lot of significantly lower cost housing into the market, and even if it's not always lower cost, if it's luxury stuff, it's more units out there for people. And Grand Rapids really wants to grow. People want to be here. That is great. I want to be here. You want to be here. Nathan wants to be here, but so do people who don't live here yet. And so having a really welcoming community, part of that means building more housing units. So now that's all why it's great. The problem is, and Nathan turns out to have pulled two permits last year for ADUs. Well, he was 2 of 8 permits. You heard me right, that was 8, not 80, not 800. And 8 units are really not going to make a dent in the housing need we have in Grand Rapids. So we need to get from 8 to 80 to 800 to maybe over 1,000 a year. And I think that's possible given how much capacity we have of extra space in people's yards, extra space in people's housing, extra space in people's garages. So I think all of that is possible. And so then you wonder, okay, if this is such a great idea, why didn't anybody do it? And there, we're going to I'm stealing a lot of Nathan's thunder here, but we both think the same thing, which is, okay, why do people not do things? Well, one reason maybe is financing. So it's easy to get a home mortgage. It's a little trickier to get a mortgage for something that's not your home. If people don't know how to do that, if they don't know what bank to go to, if banks aren't geared up for it, there's a whole financing piece that we need to work on with our banking partners in the community to make this really easy for people to do and not demystify it, get rid of the lack of information. There's lack of information in general, and that's people are like, okay, that sounds interesting, but how would I actually do that? I'm not a contractor, I've never been a landlord. And so Nathan actually just did his first sold out ADU boot camp, did it over at city offices, 1120 Monroe, which is where you go to get a permit for anything. And we had city staff there. So it was a real great partnership. Like Nathan kicked it off, but the city pulled in and did support work and wants to lean into this space. So this is really an opportunity for the broader community to get involved with the city as we move forward in this, and it's starting to happen. So I sort of feel like we're seeing a rock start to roll downhill, and it's exciting, and I hope that it gathers speed. But to do that, we're going to have to get rid of barriers to entry, demystify it, have some examples out there in the community people could see. There are some zoning issues that we need to work on, some code issues, hence that gets complicated enough, you're like, all right, we need a task force. We need to get 5 or 6 people together to come up with recommendations for how to do this, and then think that through, pre-digest, and then bring that to the city commission. Say, look, we really took some time to think about this. We really looked at the array of opportunities. We think the city should do this.
Does the task force ever talk about incentives to encourage folks to take this on? Because, I mean, I imagine it's a lift to remodel your garage into an apartment. And I wonder if that is what is one of the reasons that holds folks back from doing it. Has the city or the task force considered what an incentive would look like?
Yeah, so one incentive that actually works right now today is the new pilot program, and it stands for payment in lieu of taxes, that the city commission approved, I think, in December of last year. So that can help you lower your taxes as long as you're willing to income restrict the unit. So that's one that's available today. It's certainly something that we've talked about, because there's a benefit not only to the person who builds it. There's going to be some financial benefits for them. We have a new unit of housing, so the community benefits, and the city also benefits because the property taxes are going up. So there is some money there, but finding out exactly how much and what that could do is something that we're definitely talking about, but have not come to a conclusion yet.
Well, and there are examples where, so let's say a business moves into Grand Rapids. There's routinely conversations about what incentives do we want to give that business, because we know that everybody who works there will pay income tax. Well, we know that if we get a new person living in the city, they're going to pay city income tax. So the city has not just a property tax incentive here, but they have an income tax incentive. And so that means we could very well legitimately talk about, do we want to give someone a write-off on their taxes for a few years for doing this? It's also true that if, let's say, I make an ADU and I'm renting out my garage and I'm making an extra $10,000 a year in income, well, I, as a current resident of the city, are going to make more money. Well, I have to pay taxes on that money. And so incentives are definitely we're talking about. I don't think they're the thing that is going to uncap this. I think they can help that ball roll a little faster. I mean, anything, if you incentivize it, people will do more of, right? If there was free gasoline, we'd all be driving cars that got 2 miles to the gallon. If we said, every Tuesday we're giving away free ice cream at the Dairy Queen, you'd have a big line, right? So making things free really incentivizes. Making things cheaper can help. But I think the real barriers right now are barriers of information and believing it's possible. So Nathan, I don't know if you want to tell your anecdote about converting somebody by accident while you were building one.
So I'm building the second one up on the northeast side in Belknap, and I have a neighbor of mine, a neighbor across the alleyway, and we started talking, and he has since hired us to actually design, and eventually we'll end up building a second one. And so it's a very nice alley, and you could imagine that it's a whole new opportunity to have essentially a new street. If we lined both sides with a bunch of ADUs and activate that, it's very walkable, it's very human scale, and just naturally, because it's smaller, it's going to be more affordable. So that's a really nice market solution to the housing shortage.
Does the building already have to exist to be considered an ADU? No. So if you don't have a garage or a shed out back.
Nope.
Yeah, and that's so. Mayor LaGrand is working on converting his garage, and he lives in Heritage Hill and has got a great carriage house set up for that. For both of mine, they've been brand new builds. I like that. It's easier for me to do. There's less unknowns when it comes to that, and the numbers can still work out. So if you're building a 850 square foot ADU above a 3-stall garage, you can probably expect to spend around $180,000, and you might be able to get somewhere between $17,000 and $20,000 a year in rent. And so those numbers, start to pencil out, which I think is the most important thing. But they also, ADUs serve as an affordability engine. So right now in Grand Rapids, the median household can't afford the median house. But if you add in a basement or an attic ADU, suddenly that math changes. And that's pretty impressive, because only like 3 out of the 50 top largest cities allow that to happen, and this basically gets Grand Rapids into that 4th slot, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
We briefly mentioned the boot camp that you hosted, but you also have you're wearing a shirt for it. My Backyard Build.
Yeah.
You have a company for backyard builds, and I believe that is the vehicle for hosting the boot camp.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about both.
Yeah, so the idea with my backyard build was to help share what I've learned building my own ADUs to help other people build theirs. So we offer education first and foremost. We can help design it. Sometimes the zoning can be, first of all, I'd say our zoning ordinance is good. It's very good. We're working on making it even better, but it'd still be hard to understand. So we can help you design the plans, help you get those permitted, and we can build it for you. So we can do any one of those things. We don't have to do them all, but kind of the path is if someone out there is thinking, hey, I might like to build an ADU, first you want to get a little information, and we'll just help you move around that path as long as you need to be. And at any time you can just say, hey, good enough. We'll go and take it from here. So. That was the reason it was started, and the boot camp was our first attempt at kind of education.
Cool. And the boot camp, you had 41 attendees,
Yeah.
so there might be 41 ADUs coming. Get that number up closer to 50. 50 new units here in Grand Rapids. So what were folks taking away from the boot camp? What was...
So we did a survey. We had great feedback. Different people took away different things. So everybody was there for some particular reason. Some people really connected with the financing piece because they knew they wanted to do it. They just didn't know how they're going to pay for it. A lot of people were really interested in connecting with the city. David kind of mentioned it earlier of there's this old saying, if you can't fight City Hall. But in this case, nobody is fighting City Hall. City Hall is leaning in. Everybody, the planning team, the city manager, the mayor, the city commission, everybody wants to do the right thing. And so when you have all of those people in the room, people pull what it is that they're missing pieces. And so a lot of people were very interested in the costs. And so I shared, how much do you expect to spend depending on the type of build. So everybody took away something different. We tried to have something for everybody.
And when you say the city's leaning in, within the last year, the city has made changes to ordinances, zoning ordinances around ADUs. Can you explain kind of what those changes are and how that has made it easier for folks to do this?
Well, Nathan, I don't know if you want to bring any up. One small one was we made it easier to put in basement egress windows. And that's important because, as I mentioned before, Nathan's a great partner on this because every time I get, lean in too heavily on one part of the message, he's like, yes, but also basement apartments. So just to take a second to talk about basement apartments. The nice thing about a basement is, yes, it already has 4 walls and it already has a roof, which is, the first floor of your house. And it also has a floor, but it's also already integrated into your water and sewer, for example, which makes it cheaper. It's already probably integrated into your heating system. So you don't have to go build new HVAC. You don't have to have a new water and sewer connection. And so lots of those costs sort of get put to the side. And so statistically, a basement conversion into a rental unit is the cheapest way to get an accessory dwelling unit. And for folks out there, I would encourage you to think baby steps. So, if you've got a boomerang kid, think about doing this as a test model. And then think, all right, if the renter wasn't my son, but it was, his friend, how would that feel? And the other thing I can't emphasize enough here is Melissa and I have been landlords for decades, and it has produced tons of friendships and relationships for us. So I look at our renters as friends. They are people I wind up getting to know. I'm interested in them. They're usually interesting people. So they actually make my life better having this relationship with people I'm renting to. And I think it's very easy for people to think, ooh, scary renters, what would I be getting into?
In my basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's partly because I live in Heritage Hill, which is like 60% renters. But I just think it's worth pointing out to people that I promise you, there are lots of neat, interesting people who want to rent. And welcoming them into your lives in just that very small way of having the relationship of renting them a place can be really, really rewarding. And so for all the other reasons to think about this, a big property management company isn't making friends with their tenants. And you all know some of the bigger apartment complexes in town. They're not like becoming buddies with the property managers, whereas Nathan probably knows his tenants. I know my tenants. So anything that can get us sort of the mom and pop investor stuff going on, but also the mom and pop relationship stuff, it really helps build community. And I think, I've really got a few big jobs as mayor. One of them is to look at the city and think, how can we make a community in this town richer, more resilient, it's a stress breaker for us. If we have a strong community, we don't have to be as worried about the rest of the world. And so, especially now when people are so stressed out about bigger issues on the world scale, building a really resilient, mutually supportive city here, if we can rock, we can sleep better at night. If we can really be a great place, and I think having good landlord-tenant relationships usually happens at the smallest scale best, and the more of that we can do, I think the stronger our city's going to be.
Yeah.
The city commission really enabled that because they allowed this to happen by right. So it used to be a qualified review process where you had to go and get permission from your neighbors. Now anywhere in the city that single family homes or two family homes exist, you can have an ADU by right, which is really awesome.
So are there any other zoning changes that stick in your mind?
This is one thing. So they talk about these as like poison pills. If you have an owner requirement, it used to be that you had to live on the land. The problem with that is then banks won't finance it. So that was removed. They changed a height limit, so they made it so that you could build a taller unit, which made it much cheaper to build because you don't have to do all of these weird roof lines. Those were the primary ones. I might be missing some.
Yeah, and there's more to do. We both have our list of I'd love to do this too, and this too, and this too. Yeah. Now, you got to be, you got to always be cautious and get community engagement and listen to people and listen to possible downsides, because there's possible downsides to just about everything in the world. Now, sometimes the downsides are pretty small, and sometimes they're pretty significant, right? So I would not want to test whether it's a good idea to have an 85-mile-an-hour speed limit on Eastern Avenue, because the downside to that is really, really bad. Now, I would be interested in testing, should we put a stop sign, a four-way stop, at an intersection with a two-way stop? Because the downside risk of that doesn't seem to be very high. So that's a traffic example, but in this space, we wouldn't want to say, anybody can build a 50-story skyscraper wherever they want in the city of Grand Rapids with no setbacks and no parking requirements, right? So it's a question of taking a step and then seeing what happened, and then taking another step and taking another step, and finding the right balance, right? Because people don't live in Grand Rapids because they secretly wish they could live in downtown Manhattan, but they came here instead. They live in Grand Rapids because they like Grand Rapids, and so we don't want to make a city that feels fundamentally different than what we all love.
So for folks who are watching and want to follow along with this conversation as it unfolds between the task force and the city commission, how can they do that? Are the task force meetings open to the public? Are there timelines people can look out for? Or?
So I don't know about the public thing. I don't think they're open to the public, but the plan right now is that we will be presenting to the committee of the whole probably in November, and then that would probably be December before it gets in front of the city commission.
And committee of the whole meetings are public.
Absolutely,
definitely.
With public comment. So
Yeah.
But if you want to have a conversation about this and not just make public comment, this is my point where I remind everybody, we have Mayor's Mondays. I am leaving from here to go to Mayor's Mondays, which are 5:30 to 7, the first 3 Mondays of every month. First ward, first week, second ward, second week, third ward, third week, and we talk about housing 1 in 3 months. We do housing, justice and policing, neighborhood investment. And so this month, we're going to kick off, because it's the first real Monday in September. We're going to kick off our justice and policing conversation again, but that's a continuation of the conversation that we've already had going. So if this floats your boat, if you're excited, Nathan and I both come to do the Housing Mayor's Mondays thing, so we are really available. In case you haven't figured it out yet, we like to talk about this. This is really exciting. So we'd love to talk, and not just answer questions, but hear ideas, because we're both hungry to hear new ideas, experiences. So
it is now time for us to take a break, so I'm sure we'll have questions about ADUs that we can continue this conversation. When we return, we'll be answering questions from viewers like you. So to take part in the conversation, send in a question to cityconnection@grcmc.org or submit a question through the Rapidian's Instagram story @the Rapidian. Welcome back to City Connection. It's September 8, 2025, and we're joined here by Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan Biller, who sits on the ADU Special Task Force. We just had a great conversation about accessory dwelling units and what's keeping folks from doing it and what's out there to make it easier. But during this part of the show, we'll be taking questions from viewers, starting with a question from Reddit. Would LaGrand like to comment on the Illinois Secretary of State finding flock safety in violation of state law sharing data with ICE? I would also like to know if he supports surveilling the movements of people within the city of Grand Rapids using a network of ALPR's cameras.
So since I have no idea what the Illinois Secretary of State did, no, I would not like to comment on that. I think that I think that public safety is really important, and I think that there are new tools that we can use, and I personally tend to think that if my eyeballs can see something, I tend to think it's not that sinister to think of a camera seeing it. So, for example, we finally allowed cameras on construction sites on highways, because those can be really dangerous, and like to see who hit a worker with a camera is really valuable. I would love, for example, state law prohibits us having common sense things like cameras that could catch speeders, cameras that could catch people running red lights, which I think is really too bad, because I think that public safety broadly means safety from harm. And so it's a very complicated topic, but the answer is I'm not against cameras capturing the same information that I could capture with my eyeballs. I don't, if I looked inside somebody's, window in the middle of the night, there are rules against that. So there should be rules against cameras doing it. But if a camera can tell us something like, for example, we're just using them at the city. We're actually using drones to look at the west side and see how many empty parking spots there are during the course of the week, so we can see what parking capacity is, so that we can start planning for what's going to happen when the arena and the amphitheater come online. So there are lots of really good uses for camera technology, that kind of sort of stitching information together. Do I think it's a good idea if we could use Ring cameras to figure out where somebody went after an armed robbery rather than have to engage in a high-speed chase? Yeah, high-speed chases are really dangerous, and so sometimes using camera technology, it clearly gets you to better outcomes and better public safety.
Another question from Reddit, similar topic. Though sharing data with ICE is concerning, I am also concerned that in an era of data breaches and under-table data purchasing, can we really trust a third-party agent with the location data of Grand Rapids citizens? What assurances do we have that this data isn't being used for more than law enforcement? Though it is a legally gray area, I believe there needs to be an open and honest discussion of our right to privacy and how the actions of city governance can erode or bolster that right.
Absolutely. We should absolutely keep having that discussion.
Fair. Keep it short. We have a question from Instagram. How many big gray apartments are fully leased? Should we be funding more without utilizing all?
I don't know what that question means.
I don't know either.
Maybe it was a typo. Big gray apartment.
Occupancy rates are generally very high, and we have a lot of people that want to move to the city, and we have a lot of people that are moving to the city. And so if we don't build, what that means is that they come and displace people who currently live here. The only way to prevent that,
drive prices up.
Yes, and drive prices up. So we need to be building as much housing as we can. There's no one silver bullet for housing. ADUs are one of the things, and large mid-rise buildings and large high-rises, they're just another tool in the tool belt.
Yeah. So the example I often use for this is, think about cars. Everybody intuitively gets that if there were 2 cars for sale in the city and we were all the city residents, then giving us more money just drives up the prices of those 2 cars, but it doesn't make a third car. Until you have a third car, we got a problem. The other part of this that you might want to think through is, if you go to a car dealership and there's no inventory on the lot, that's a problem. So car dealers have inventory for a reason. So a healthy housing market has a certain amount of vacancy to it, because some of that vacancy will then signal to the landlords, gee, maybe I'm trying to charge too much for that apartment, right? Whereas if they never get that signal, they'll be like, well, let's just raise it some more and see what happens. So Nathan, you've got an apartment that you thought you could rent for X, and it's been vacant for a little while, right? That's good, because that's telling Nathan, hey, maybe he's charging too much for that apartment. So a healthy market, it's just a little bit like a healthy employment market. Turns out an unemployment rate of about 4% is kind of like no unemployment, because it means, yes, there are some people that don't have jobs, but the day after you quit a job, by definition, you don't have a job. So not everybody quits from job A and has job B lined up. If you just decided tomorrow it's absolutely awful to be here and you never wanted to be here again, the odds of you finding a job within 24 hours aren't great. That doesn't mean you're unemployable, right? And so that translates to an unemployment rate of about 4%. Well, a vacancy rate of 0 in Grand Rapids is not where we want to be. We want to be at a healthy vacancy rate, because that also means, granularly, if you open the want ads, you can be like, oh, there are 5 or 6 things I'm interested in looking at. And ideally, we'd all like to choose where we live, as opposed to being like, oh, here is your Soviet block apartment building that you have to move into now.
I will. I think the other part of that question beyond vacancy, maybe that big gray apartment comment is about the style of apartments, which I do think is an interesting conversation in Grand Rapids because we're kind of really lucky with Heritage Hill neighborhoods and with like historic neighborhoods that we have in the west side where a lot of those are rentals where we can live and pay like $1,000 a month to live in a beautiful, cool old house. And a lot of other cities don't have that. But as we grow, we know that we can't sprawl anymore in Grand Rapids, not so much, so we have to start building up, which changes some of the culture of Grand Rapids and what we normally see and what our skyline looks like, and maybe folks are uncomfortable with that change.
Look, everyone's a critic, right? I
Right.
think that City Hall is like one of the least attractive buildings on planet Earth. That's just my opinion. I don't like City Hall or the county building at all, aesthetically. Some people like it, I do not. Some people like the look of the John Hancock, some people do not. Some people like the look of, the new, whatever went in, the Burj Khalifa, some do not. If you look at Grand Rapids, like even our big buildings, there's significant difference between how they all look. It's also true, to bring this home to ADUs, like my garage does not look like anybody else. By the time it's done, that is going to be a unique living space.
Yeah.
Nathan is building things that just don't actually look exactly like everything else because little quirky allows for quirky differences. And if you look, again, if anybody's interested, go find a book on ADUs. There are so many cool designs. There are so many ways that you can express your creativity by building one of these, and you can't express your creativity by building yet another thing that looks exactly the same. And yeah, we've got a lot of 4 or 5 story 40 to 60 unit apartments in Grand Rapids being built right now that look a lot like the other ones. That's true. So go be unique and build an ADU.
I was going to say the ADU conversation fits in there nicely. I will also say, just because I read a lot of documenters' notes from city commission meetings, how often like designers of new apartment buildings have to come in and talk about how many flyers they put on neighbors' doors to get feedback on building that's coming in. I know I've sat in some of the meetings up in Belknap when GVSU was going to Belknap and apartment complexes were coming in there. So being tapped into community conversations, you can actually like pivot and say that you want a different facade on a building that's coming to your neighborhood.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
there's ways to be involved. This question is about traffic on 131. Are there any plans to lengthen the off and on ramps on most of these dangerous ramps that cause backups on 131, or even going south a dedicated lane for rampers?
The one that scares the daylights out of me is the off ramp from the 131 onto Wealthy going northbound. It scares me. Because you're coming around a blind curve into an off ramp that goes off the fast lane. And if that backs up onto the highway, I'm amazed we don't have more really, really bad things happening there. So yes, there are plans for redesigning the 131 by Wealthy, and we're out of time. So
Yeah, I know. I've seen that. So many semis trying to get on the highway at that.
People get stuck.
ramp
Semis
and
get stuck there all the time
all the
too.
time.
Yeah, it's a real
Always
design
backing
problem.
up. Yeah. Well, it's time for us to take another break, but when we come back, we'll be answering more questions from viewers like you.
It's morning in Grand Rapids. Do you know what's going on in your city? Stay informed about what's happening in your community with The Rapidian, your source for hyperlocal news and information. The Rapidian is a community-focused news source powered by local residents like you. Our volunteer writers and reporters create content that hits close to home about topics like local government, business, schools, events, and people. The Rapidian goes beyond the headlines to provide in-depth coverage of issues that affect Grand Rapids directly, so you can stay in the know. We aim to uplift the community by sharing positive, inspiring stories of growth, progress, and neighborhood pride. The Rapidian is your neighborhood newspaper for the digital age. Follow us on our website and social media to stay connected to your community. This is The Rapidian.
Welcome back to City Connection. We're joined here by Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan Biller talking about ADU Special Task Force and more housing topics along with that. But we're taking questions now from the public. This question comes from Reddit. It's about ADUs. When we built our ADU, we had an additional about $10,000 cost plus the ongoing connection fees because the water department refused to allow us to connect our ADU to our house's water line. Their rationale was that they wanted the services to be separate in case the property was ever split. Never mind the fact that we had to file a deed restriction prohibiting exactly that as part of the ADU approval process. Has this issue been addressed? Is the city working to make sure all relevant departments, not just planning, are addressing housing affordability?
Boy, you're singing our song. So thank you for building your ADU, watcher, and I'm sorry you had to go through that, and that is absolutely on our radar, and it's one of our top concerns is making providing water and sewer services to an ADU as affordable as possible, and obviously connecting up to the house makes life so much easier. So you want to say more?
Well, I'd say that has been fixed, yes. So the
water has.
The water.
The sewer has not yet.
Correct, and that's a state building code. So, but water, the easiest way to do this is to do vertical drilling and come right up underneath the house and tap directly into that meter that already exists. That way you don't have any tap fees, you don't have to mess with anything at the street. As far as sewer, Michigan plumbing code prohibits you from having sewage from one unit flow through another for obvious reasons, but you can go around the side of the house and Y in the front, which also avoids tap fees and connection fees. It's still expensive. But
and frankly, that separate unit thing always strikes me with a dull thud, because like, okay, if I have a family of 10 and we're all flushing the toilets and there's a backup, I don't really care whose backup I'm dealing with in my basement. I don't want the backup, but like, so if my in-laws are living in my backyard and they contribute to the toilet flushes, so what? The fact that they're in a backyard unit doesn't magically change the dynamic of, so one big unit can flush 10 toilets, but two little units with an equal number of toilets, that's terrible because the people aren't related to each other. Like, again, like DNA-based zoning and housing is not generally where I want to go.
But that is a state decision, so that's not something the city commission right now.
But I can be unhappy about it. Just like, it's one of the reasons why the no more than 4 unrelated people living in a house, the fact that we stretched that to 6, because I think, frankly, okay, so if I had 6 kids, we're all allowed to live in the same house, but if I want to live in a house with my friends, I'm not allowed to do that. So what, you have DNA-based housing restrictions? Like, again, doesn't strike me as something I really want to defend. Yeah,
I wonder if as definitions of family change over the years, if we'll see that impact on policy.
Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. Another question from Reddit. In response to the executive government's threats of increased federal abductions targeting the people of the city of Chicago, we've seen the mayor of Chicago take significant protective actions like lining up city salt trucks as barriers to ice. We have trucks, and we've seen the city of Grand Rapids line up trucks to protect buildings and property in anticipation of justified public rage at GRPD militant attacks. Why are we not seeing similar city action to protect more of our people from abduction? Don't people targeted with these violent and unlawful abductions deserve the same protective resources as downtown parking garages? What has the mayor done to respond to demands from groups representing the most at-risk people like Cosecha and other groups? Why has he not done more?
Well, okay, we can talk about this, but briefly, there are a number of people out there who are at risk in the community, and COSECHA has a voice in this, but they don't have a monopoly over speaking for people in the community. No one has a monopoly for that. So my concern in the city continues to be that we not put the people who are most at risk at harm by doing things that are counterproductive or by giving them a false sense of security. And so there has been conversation around, I will say this clearly because I'll say it all the time, I think that every resident of our city deserves to live a life where they are safe and respected, regardless of whether they have the same piece of paper that I do at home, whether they have a passport or whether they don't have a US passport. But instantiating that means figuring out how to actually do work to keep our community safe. And our commission, I have been very clear on this, and I am an attorney, I've looked at it very carefully. We have instantiated policies which do not authorize our city police to cooperate with ICE. Now, what I've also said is, I don't have an army, so I can't keep ICE out of Grand Rapids. Now, if people are saying they're lining up salt trucks in Chicago, it's also true that our president said that Chicago was going to find out why he renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. So when you've got a president of the United States all but saying that he's declaring war on the third biggest city in the country, the third biggest city in the country might rationally want to take notice of that. No one said that they want to declare war on Grand Rapids, and so this is a constant issue that we are constantly reevaluating. The core question and the core value is, do we value everyone in our community equally, and do we want to keep everyone safe? And the answer is yes. Now, some things that COSECHA recently asked us to do don't really make any sense to me. So they said, declare that you won't use money to build a federal detention facility in Grand Rapids, that you won't use Grand Rapids money for that. Well, I could do that. I could also, we could also have a policy that we're not in favor of child labor in Grand Rapids, but we're not. So we don't have to have policies that point out the obvious. We are obviously not going to spend Grand Rapids taxpayer money giving free detention centers to the federal government. That's a silly hypothetical. So if somebody comes and demands that I don't do something that we would never possibly do, I'm not going to waste people's time and resources on bizarre hypotheticals. So I'm very laser focused on figuring out what ICE is doing, figuring out how to best protect our community, making sure that our police force is not participating in ICE efforts, but also not giving senses of false hope and false security to the most vulnerable people in society simply because some group stands up and says, we speak for everyone. They don't.
Thanks for taking that question. From Reddit, how frustrating is it speaking to constituents who don't understand the difference between a strong mayoral system versus a weak one?
I think it's, that's a good question. I think the answer is, the good news is that my job is chief policymaker along with the commission and not implementation. So I don't find it all that frustrating. Sometimes if people call me and say, hey, I want to know why the Parks Department did X, I have to say, well, you should really be talking to the city manager. It's not that frustrating, partly because, in case you haven't figured it out yet, I love thinking about better policy, how to do policy better in the city. I love working with the commission and with citizens on those kinds of things. So I've got plenty on my plate working on policy. Keeping the trains running on time, so to speak, that's the city manager's job. And I don't want to...
Rapids, your role is more like leading conversations than it is leading decision-making processes?
No, it's policy versus implementation.
Okay.
So a policy, for example, is, should it be illegal to jaywalk in Grand Rapids? That's a policy decision. That's city commission. The question of how many police we hire, that's an implementation question. But it also partly comes through budget, and we're directly in control of the budget.
Yeah.
Now, so really the question is, do I find the city manager system a barrier to getting good policy in place? I don't. I mean, case in point, city manager is totally on board with the ADU task force. He sent, he was totally on board with resources for the ADU boot camp. Like, our city manager wants to pull in the same direction that the city commission does, and he's really good. So I find it really comforting to have him pulling in the same direction as us. Now, there's the theoretical possibility that I could have a city manager whose values didn't align with the commission, but then that would be the commission's job to sort that out. So, I mean, there are lots of people who wish for a strong mayor form of government. I like, call me old-fashioned, but in the federal system, there's this whole idea of checks and balances. The thing about a mayor, city manager form of government is it's kind of a checks and balances thing. And the city manager and I work really well in that creative dynamic. We really do. So.
Cool. A question from Reddit. If the weak mayor system is such a barrier to responding to the people of your city who you represent, what are you doing to challenge and change the system? Which we kind of just talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, whether I would rather be a strong mayor, I'm not gonna like publicly declare that, for one thing, because I'm happy with the status quo. But it's also true that if the citizens want to go change the system of government, they can. Now, I don't think I'd want to do more than 2 terms as mayor because I'm not 18 anymore. But I think term limits in general are dumb. But we put them in the charter, and we have them in Grand Rapids now. So there are plenty of things in the charter that we might re-examine. We had a city comptroller not too long ago who said, "I don't think this should be a job," and we put it up for vote, and the citizens spoke, and we still have a comptroller because the citizens wanted one. So, I tend to think on those kinds of questions, I pretty quickly say, the citizens can do what they want there, and I am working inside a system that's set up by the citizens because that's how democracy works.
Yep. Question from Charlie. Estimates say we need 35,000 new houses in the next 4 years. How many ADUs do you estimate we can do in GR in that time?
2 answers to that. One is that's a county-wide statistic. It's not that bad in Grand Rapids. The second is, how many do we have the potential to do? Oddly enough, I think we have the potential to build as many ADUs as we have housing unit needs. Yeah. So how many housing units
There's about 85,000 housing units. About half of those are homeowners, and the correct stat for the city is about 13,000. So
right.
Okay.
That's 7.3 a day, and we're building like 1.3 to 1.5. So there's a 6 unit deficit every day.
But could we build? Are there 7,000 garages in Grand Rapids that could get converted? Obviously there are. So, but I don't think that's when you have a complicated problem or a big lift problem like housing, which is a continent-wide challenge. You don't look for one thing. You look for a 5% response here, a 5% response there. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying this is the magic thing that's going to solve all of our housing problems in Grand Rapids. It's a really exciting strategy.
It looks like that is all the time we have today. I know I saw some more housing questions, so I'll send them your way to get them answered, and we'll put them on social media after that. But thank you to our guests, Mayor David LaGrand and Nathan Biller, for coming in and sharing your insight about housing and otherwise. And thank you to all of you at home for tuning in and sending in your questions. Don't forget, you can always watch free broadcasts throughout the month of September on cable GRTV's Channel 25 or the GRTV YouTube page. See you next month, Grand Rapids.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, The Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection, where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events. From concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen, as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show, or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.